In an abandoned estate shrouded in the whispers of time, where the once vibrant halls had succumbed to silence and decay, there lay a secret that had been hidden for decades. The structure, its walls marked by the passage of a forgotten era and the ghosts of memories, now served as the silent keeper of mysteries untold. It was in this loneliness of crumbling grandeur that a tattered, yellowed envelope was discovered beneath the rotting floorboards, a discovery that would awaken the once muted echoes of the past. The envelope, fragile and worn by the ravages of time, seemed to pulse with a latent urgency, as if the dead themselves had wished to reawaken with a story they had long tried to forget. The estate, with its imposing staircase draped in cobwebs and its corridors that led to hidden chambers of lost relics, became the canvas upon which time painted its melancholy masterpiece. Each creaking board and every shadow that danced under the pale light of a reluctant sun held remnants of days filled with vivacity, secrets, and hidden confessions. It was in this context that the envelope came to light, a message sealed in an era where words carried the power to immortalize truth and warn of undiscovered perils. The narrative, sewn meticulously into the faded paper, was choreographed by a hand desperate to leave behind a legacy of confession. And, in that confession, a warning resonated with a gravity that transcended even death. The journey of the envelope began long ago, in an age when the estate brimmed with life and laughter. In that forgotten time, a life shattered by deep secrets unraveled in a crescendo of despair. The hand that penned the haunting lines was guided by both remorse and forewarning, a dual force of penance and a desire to protect against the hidden evils that lurked even beyond mortal departure. The ink, now almost dissolved into obscurity by the relentless march of time, spoke of clandestine meetings, forbidden trysts, betrayals unspoken, and a potent fear of retribution that was yet to come. The narrative hinted at an unspeakable truth, a truth so dangerous that even in death, its bearer felt compelled to leave behind a testament, however incomplete it might be. The narrative of the envelope unfolded like the layers of an enigma, revealing fragments of an inner turmoil that had endangered not only the writer's life but the lives of many who had been unwittingly entwined in a web of deceit. As the faded ink told of midnight rendezvous and whispered conspiracies, the envelope turned into an artifact that challenged the boundaries between the living and the dead. In its quiet tones, it whispered of sins that begged for redemption, of secrets that sought to undo the tangled skein of fate itself. Here was a confession, a letter left unfinished, its trails of ink trembling at the threshold of revelation, hinting that the past might yet come to claim its due. The estate itself seemed to listen intently, as if the cold stone and creaking timber bore witness to events that had long faded into mere folklore. The walls, lined with portraits whose eyes watched with silent judgments, bore the scars of hidden tragedies that had steeped the place in an almost palpable sorrow. These relics of a bygone era now served as intermediaries between the realms of the living and the spectral whisper of memories. It was as if the very fabric of the house resonated with the earthbound energy of the departed. Each corner nurtured an untold chapter that yearned for the light of truth. As the discovery of the envelope spread subtly among those who dared to pry into the estate's mysteries, it began to evoke a flood of recollections in the hearts of the few who still remembered the splendor and turmoil of the past. There was a palpable shift, a mingling of curiosity and dread that gripped the local community. With every careful lift and each scrutinized detail, the envelope opened the door to a realm where time blurred and every word written on its brittle surface stirred thoughts of what might have been. The estate, which had long been an icon of desolation, became a stage upon which the spectral past waltzed in an eternal dance of revelation and regret. The narrative inscribed within the envelope recounted a saga of lost love, betrayal, and the reckless pursuit of forbidden truths. The prose was at once anguished and resolute, as if the writer knew that every word carried a weight that might one day unravel a web of lies carefully spun over years of imposture. It was a confession that defied the silence of death, a declaration that, though marred by hesitation, had survived the passage of years. It promised answers to questions left dormant in the collective memory of those who had witnessed the estate's heyday and those who had since lived in its shadow. In penning those words, the writer risked everything, offering a glimpse into a mind tormented by conflict, a mind that sought solace in revealing secrets that had poisoned both past and present. This haunting manuscript was not merely a document, but rather an echo from a life defined by moments of irrevocable decisions and consequences that haunted well beyond a mortal lifetime. The confessional prose, though battered by time, conveyed a vivid tableau of an existence once marred by tragedy, a life suffused with the bitter tang of regret. The incomplete letter was a relic, a silent witness that bore a promise to the future, the assurance that some truths, no matter how deeply buried or forgotten, could resurface to demand justice. It compelled those who discovered it to walk a precarious line between melancholy and morbid fascination, between searching for closure and daring to disturb long-settled dust. The narrative led the discoverers of the envelope into a labyrinth of memory and echoing footfalls of the past. Each step they took along the creaking floors and dilapidated corridors was a descent into history, into the temporal layers where the distinction between now and then had all but vanished. The estate, with its eavesdropping walls and corridors that murmured secrets with every gust of wind, provided the perfect backdrop for a revelation that bordered on the supernatural. The air was thick with the sense that every relic and every stain on the once immaculate floorboards was a silent testament to events that demanded remembrance. Within this domain of memories lay the painful realization that some messages, no matter how reluctant to express themselves, would always find a way to reach the living. The envelope, evidently not intended to be uncovered by prying eyes, carried an aura of forewarning that extended beyond the mere words inscribed on its surface. What struck those who examined it was the palpable tension frozen in the ink, as if the writer's hand had trembled with a blend of trepidation and insistence. The very act of transcribing those words was fraught with emotional risk, a risk that had left the confession unfinished. It was as though the writer had been interrupted by a realization so damning that he was compelled to stop mid-thought, leaving behind a puzzle that begged for a resolution. This broken chain of thought resonated with the spectators of the past, a stark reminder that life rarely offered neatly tied endings, and that in some cases, the most unsettling conclusions were the ones left to fester in the void. The discovery of the unfinished letter sent ripples through the community that still lingered in the vicinity of the long-forgotten estate. The air around the mansion became charged with an almost electric anticipation, as if the residual energy of secrets concealed within its ancient walls influenced minds predisposed to believe in the uncanny. Each curious eye that peered into the depths of the estate seemed to carry with it an unspoken promise to unravel the half-whispered truths preserved on that yellowed paper, to summon from the depths of history the voices of those silenced far too long ago. An undercurrent of suspense wove itself through the collective consciousness, binding the living to a narrative that challenged the impassive finality of death. The estate, long relegated to nothing more than a relic of a bygone era, was transformed by the presence of this unfinished narrative. Where the decay of time had once rendered it a mere monument to neglect, it now pulsed with the fervent heartbeat of unresolved destinies. The discovery beckoned the curious to venture deeper into its labyrinthine halls, prompting an exploration not only of the physical ruins but of the intangible remnants of a life saturated with secrets. The heavy air, filled with the scent of damp decay and the lingering trace of lost grandeur, set the stage for a confrontation with the most enigmatic parts of the human soul. In that confrontation lay the challenge of reconciling the past with the present, of giving voice to a story that had been stifled by the relentless march of time. The narrative of the envelope now served as both a cautionary tale and an invitation to the brave and the inquisitive, a compelling call to venture into the shadowy intersection of memory and mystery. It was a reminder that, although the living might attempt to bury the truths of the past deep beneath layers of dust and sorrow, those truths had an uncanny ability to claw their way back into the light, demanding acknowledgement and, perhaps, redemption. In the remnants of that faded correspondence lay a battle cry for honesty and accountability, a call for the acknowledgement of secrets that had long been consigned to the darkness of silence. As the envelope's message resonated with each heartbeat of the estate, it began to weave its chilling tapestry through the minds of all who encountered it. The delicate, almost trembling script painted a picture of a tumultuous past, where every misstep and every betrayal had left indelible scars on souls too fragile to endure their consequences. The writer, in his final act of desperation and clarity, had frozen a moment of vulnerability, hoping against hope that it might serve as a beacon for the living, a guide to navigate the murky waters of history and the sorrow that stems from unresolved regret. His words, though incomplete, exuded a raw humanity that transcended the barrier between life and the quiet of death, offering a lens into the precarious balance between truth and obfuscation. In the dim light of a waning afternoon, as dust motes danced across the desolate halls like phantom memories, the estate bore witness once again to the uncanny interplay of past and present. With every measured step, the seeker of truth found himself drawn further into the maze of forgotten promises and silent lamentations. The letter, a remnant of a time when emotions roiled with the intensity of a storm, continued to cast its long, ominous shadow over the abandoned corridors, challenging the passers-by to confront its bitter revelations. It was a silent dare, a gauntlet thrown at the feet of those willing to peer into the abyss of their own histories, to question the narratives that had long been taken for granted. Underneath layers of disintegration and surrender to time's relentless decay, a singular truth began to emerge from the dust of the past. Some stories refused to be confined by the boundaries of mortality. The unfinished letter was proof that even when life ebbs away, the echoes of its most painful secrets persist, reverberating in the emptiness of a forgotten estate. The envelope stood as a testament to the idea that the dead, in their own final acts of confession, had the uncanny ability to speak once more, urging the living to reflect upon the mistakes that had been made and to honor the memories of those whose voices had been silenced by the inexorable tide of fate. In the end, the legacy of that fragile envelope was not merely in its unraveled words, but in its power to awaken dormant souls to the realities of hidden histories. Each careful examination of its yellowed pages served as a reminder that the truth, no matter how heavily burdened by sorrow and regret, beckons with a relentless clarity. As the layers of time stripped away the veneer of normalcy, they revealed a raw, unsettling narrative that refused to be confined within the mausoleum of silence. The envelope, with its unfinished confession, became an emblem of the eternal struggle between memory and oblivion, light and shadow, a reminder that the stories we leave behind continue to shape the contours of our existence long after we have departed. In that abandoned estate, where once only the whispers of decay reigned, a voice from the grave rose with quiet determination, a refrain that reverberated softly yet forcefully across the threshold of time. The unfinished letter, both a relic and a revelation, challenged the living to embrace the complexity of their shared past. It asked them to confront the hidden betrayals and muffled cries that had been confined to the margins of history, daring them to acknowledge that some truths, however painful or incomplete, carry the power to reshape our understanding of what it means to be truly alive. Every crevice of the estate, every splinter of wood and every waning portrait in the dim light, echoed with the realization that the past is never truly buried. It is a silent undercurrent that flows beneath the present, shaping destinies and haunting hearts. The envelope's legacy, now interwoven with the very essence of the place, was a clarion call, an invitation to remember, to seek out the buried fragments of stories lost, and to listen to the haunting murmur of confessions that have long been muted by time. In this dance of shadows and revelations, the unfinished letter reaffirmed a simple truth. The dead, in their mysterious resurrections through whispered memories, still hold sway over the narratives of the living, beckoning us to peer into the darkness and discover the light of truth that lies beyond.